Okay, let's move on to the week five wrap up. So week five, the professor talked about a half phonology and half morphology, and I've already wrapped up, recapped all the materials from phonology in the week four video. So this video is going to be very short. It's going to cover one lecture where professor talked about morphology. So morphology is a study of word formation, how word, which is a linguistic unit in our speech and language, is made of different parts, different subcomponents of a word, which is called morphemes. However, there is no universal definition on what word is because it's a very fuzzy, blurry concept. It differs by language. Um, And in our class, our definition of a word is a single pronounceable unit in which sound and meaning are paired. So, like phrase is not a word because it's phrase like something like cold water. It's not a single unit because you can also pronounce word like cold and also pronounce word like water. They are two different things. It's a phrase. Um, So it consists of two words, word like cold and water. So each word has sound and meaning. So it should not be silent. It should not be meaningless. Like bra sound is a sound, but it does not have a meaning. So it's not a word. So these are words. These are not phrases. And that's our definition of what word is. And definition of morpheme is the smallest piece of a word. So it's a part of a word that is still meaningful. So when you say something like um, water, is what morpheme? It's not because what doesn't have a separate meaning. Um, it it cannot be called as a morpheme. Water itself is a single morpheme word. What about cold? It can be divided into C and old. Old is a word with meaning. It means someone who's old. Um, is old a morpheme here? No, because it does not have to do with the word cold. The word cold does not entail a meaning of old. So basically, cold is not consisted of C and old. It's also a single morpheme word, cold. And there's a compound words and phrases. So compound words is a multiple words combined together to form a single word, where their meaning is not a combination of the literal meanings of each word. So, for example, cold water is not a compound word. It's about something that is water and that is cold. On the other hand, something like ice cream is made up of two words, ice and cream, but it's not a combination of ice and cream. It's a certain type of food that is related to ice, that is related to cream, but it's not a literal combination of ice and cream. Compound words are sometimes hyphenated, or sometimes they are broken with a space. Sometimes they don't have a space, like grandmother. Well, it does not have a space in it. It's a single word, but it used to be a compound word because it's a compound of grand and mother. But as it's not a phrase because we're not talking about a mother who is grand. Grandmother it's a different concept. It's a mother of mother or mother of father. So those kind of words are compound words. And let's have another examples of morpheme analysis. So, for example, if you say happier, it's happier is made of a word made up of two morphemes, happy and Um, it's a it's a combination of adjective of happy and a suffix that means more. So it's a comparative uh, that meaning that something is more happy. Happier is consists of two morphemes, happy and What about teacher? Teacher is also a word with two different morphemes. One's teach, the other is Teach is a verb. It's to teach someone, to make someone learn. And here, although it sounds same with in happy, it means a different thing. It's a different morpheme. And in this time, this means that the it refers to a person who does the verb, who does the meaning of the verb here in case teach. So teacher is a person who teaches. So teacher is also consists of two morphemes, teach and while is another morpheme, is a separate from the example from above, when meant comparative. Um, sorry, comparative here in happier. And another example, weather. And this time, it does not consist of with and because there's no such word as with. It doesn't mean anything. So in this case, doesn't mean anything. It's just a part of a single morpheme, weather. So it's a one morpheme word, while happier and teacher are two morpheme, bimorphemic words. And bound morpheme and free morpheme. Bound morphemes are morphemes that are always bound to something else. It cannot be standing alone as itself. So for example, here, happier, teacher. These two ers are two different ers that sound the same but have different meaning. They are both bound morphemes because they cannot be pronounced by itself. They cannot stand alone. So for example, let's say, are you happier than Ba? You cannot say as an answer of that question. When I say like, you're what than Ba? You can say happier. Happier, you can pronounce it. You can use it as a single response, but you cannot just say So this case, is a suffix, and suffixes are always bound morphemes. And free morphemes are morphemes that can be free, that can stand alone, that have its own meaning and sound, and it can be used as a response as itself. Like happy, are you what? Happy. Like what do you do? Teach. Those kind of answers are made of a single word, made of a single morpheme, which are free. So that's why they can be set out by itself. And affixation is a process, is a type of morphological process. Compare this with the phonological process. Morphological process is a process where morpheme is introduced, deleted, changed, or transposed. Those kind of processes that has something to do with morphemes are morphological process, and affixation is a part of it. And we learn two more different affixations. One is prefixation, the other is suffixation. Prefix, when you add a prefix means something, it's a bound morpheme that exists at the beginning of a word. So when you say unhappy, this is a result of a prefixation of the word happy by the prefix un. When you say happiest, there's a suffix ist is attached to the stem morpheme happy and form the superlative form of the adjective happy. So the happiest is a result of an affixation, a result of a suffixation, with the stem morpheme happy and the suffix morpheme ist. So another key concept is the syntactic categories. Words can be categorized into certain groups, and there are two different categories. And the criteria to categorize those groups are their syntactic characteristic. How what kind of environment they can exist in a sentence is a syntactic characteristics. So let's say I am happy. In this sentence, this is a place where an adjective can come. Um, you cannot put I am happily, because happy is an adjective, happily is an adverb. There's no, you cannot make a sentence like I am happily because it's not grammatical. Or you cannot say I am and. And is a conjunction, it's not an adjective. It does not fit in this sentence because this place is for adjective. Adjective and conjunction and do not share a syntactic feature, so that's why happy and end or happily cannot be grouped into together into a single group. So happy is part of an adjective. Adjective along with noun and verb, they form a content categories or lexical categories where words have its own meaning, where they're compared to functional categories, or also called as grammatical categories, which include pronouns, articles, demonstratives, um, quantifiers, modal auxiliaries. These categories do not have its lexical meaning. It exists only for some grammatical purpose. Um, it's usually smaller than those content categories words. So it's usually like a few letters, a few segments of sounds. For example, in pronoun, you have he, she, it, they, blah blah blah. Articles: a, on, the. Demonstrative: this, that, these, those, other, blah blah blah. Quantifiers: one, two, three. Modal auxiliary: should, would, may, can, those kind of words. They all serve some grammatical function within a sentence, and they do not have some semantic meaning in it. So that's why they're grouped as a functional category. And usually, content categories are open and functional categories are closed, meaning that a new word can be introduced into these categories, into noun and verb. Every day we come up with new words, new slangs with nouns and verbs and everything. But for functional categories, you do not create a new article. So let's say there's a person, there's the person, but you cannot come up with like new like article like, well, there's a blah person. It doesn't mean anything. Or this person, that person, um, blick person, and you come up with a new word that is demonstrative in a functional category to mean something. It's very unlikely, impossible event to happen. So that's why content categories are called open, functional categories are called closed. Um, yeah, so those are two different major syntactic category um, classifications. Okay, thank you. That was kind of quick. See you next week.